Did you know there is a bee-lightful spring pollinator that is gentle, fun to watch, and oh so easy to raise? Whether you have a backyard garden or acres of blossoms, native bees are prolific pollinators which will bring you an abundance of crops and bountiful blooms. One of my favorite native bees is the spring mason bee. There are about 4,000 different species of North American native bees, with approximately 140 of those being mason bees. What is a mason bee, and how is it different from the European honeybee? Mason bees don't produce honey. Instead, they are prolific pollinators, which helps to increase spring flower plant seed production along with heavy fruit tree and berry bush yields. One female mason bee does a pollination work of 100 honeybees. 3 can pollinate a full-grown peach tree. 300 can pollinate an entire acre of fruit trees. These gals are amazing little pollinating powerhouses, and you can raise them with a few simple supplies. No protective gear required, as mason bees are solitary bees. Unlike the social honeybees with one queen and a highly organized colony, each solitary mason bee female is a queen, laying eggs and the sole provider of her offspring. The hard-working mason bees are gentle and rarely sting. They lay their eggs in existing hollow plant reeds, stems, and tunnels made by wood-boring beetles. They will also readily nest in man-made paper tubes, thick straws, and wooden blocks, making them ideal for the backyard gardener. Spring mason bees emerge from their cocoons ready to pollinate when daytime temperatures are consistently 55 degrees. Their pollination range is 300 feet or 100 yards, the length of a football field. If you have enough blooms for them to pollinate and a suitable habitat, these gals will provide you with pollination year after year. Are you interested yet? Come on, let's raise some bees. For nesting, mason bees prefer holes with a 5/16 inch opening or 8 millimeters. You can use a house with reeds, paper tubes, straws, a drilled wooden block, or drilled wooden trays. I prefer to use houses that I can swap out the wooden tray blocks and thick paper tubes for spring and summer bees, but any structure that offers wind and rain protection and is stable will work. You can make your own simple backyard bee house using a can and paper tubes. I usually buy the thick paper cardboard tubes. However, for cost effectiveness, this year I'm trying out the thick, heavy-duty paper straws for shakes and smoothies. They are 8 millimeter in diameter, but must be cut down to the optimum length of 6 inches. Why should bee tubes be 6 inches? Because any size smaller will result in fewer female larvae. A mason bee determines the gender of her eggs. She will lay her female eggs to the rear of the tube for protection from predators, then will lay the male eggs towards the front of the tube. A 4-inch tube will mean that she lays more male than female eggs. So many of the bee houses for sale in Tractor Supply, Walmart, and even garden stores are only 4 to 4.5 inches deep. There are, however, reputable sites with bee houses that support 6-inch tubes. Plus, you can make your own. Please don't ever use plastic straws, as they don't breathe or absorb moisture and will cause moldy cocoons. It's just not healthy for the bees. Also, if you use drilled wooden block, please make sure the tubes are splinter-free and replace it after 2 years to prevent parasite buildup. The tray blocks disassemble, and you can take the trays and clean them out and put them back together. So every year you can control the parasite buildup and keep it nice and clean for the bees. Place the bee house about 4 to 7 feet from the ground with a water source. I like to use this. I load it with pebbles and I hang it close to the clay mud. They need clay mud to help build their cells. I buy these pans at Walmart. They're in the pet food section for dogs. I believe these are for dogs. And I like to make my own clay mud. I take our beautiful red clay and add a little bit of good soil to it, mix it up in here, keep it in this pan. It's about 2 feet right next to the water supply, about 2 feet from the bottom of the bee house stand. And that way I can control the moisture, make sure it's damp enough and not dried out, so the bee will always have good clay mud. Mason bees gather pollen and nectar, which they make into a densely packed food loaf for their offspring. They lay 1 to 2 eggs a day, creating a mud chamber for each egg and pollen loaf, laying 5 to 8 eggs per tube. It's the mud mason type work these gals do that gave them their common name. Female mason bees live for about 4 weeks. When you notice that bee activity has stopped, it's best to move, if you carefully can, any filled tubes or blocks to a cool, dry place away from any predators. Inside the nesting chambers, eggs begin their transformation into adult bees. They hatch into larvae and consume the pollen nectar loaves. After a rest period, the larva spins a silk cocoon, and by about September, a fully formed adult bee lies inside each chamber. The adult bee now waits through the winter months until the spring air temperature rises to a consistent 55-degree range, at which point it chews through its silk cocoon, emerges from the tunnel to mate and repeat the egg-laying, pollen-gathering cycle all over again. I hope you will consider raising and supporting our native bees. Thank you for listening. I'm Victoria, and have a bee-lightful day.